Bueno, pues como vamos un poco justos,
As we're a bit short of time, I'm going to start by introducing myself. The first thing is to let you know that my name is Jorge Lopez. I ran the engineering unit of Mapfre. I am working in risk engineering for some 30 years, more or less, and in my family, all of them were pilots. I was a traitor. I abandoned the family call and I left aeronautics, but at home I always followed very closely the reality of aeronautics. So since I was a little child, I lived how my father's colleagues died in a flight accident, and I think how that reality has been transformed till a moment in which air accidents stopped being news, and for someone who's devoted his life to the field of security, aeronautics was always the topmost reference. So we can ask ourselves what is happened. So security has become a reality, as there are two worlds, two references in the world of security, which are what cause differences. With a big difference, the nuclear world involves just a few units, and that learning, which is a vocation by Mapfre, letting to know the rest of operators of success stories, that is what brings us on to this table. And for these, we have the privilege to count on 4 wonderful speakers, also because security, they will tell us soon, is not dependent of just one single component, is to be seen from different points of view. We have first Isabel Maestre, the head of the Spanish Agency for Air Security, which is the topmost governmental institution in air security. He's got an executive master's in management, and he's the head of the Agency of Security, Air Security since 2008. He is a member of the board of directors of the European Air Security Agency, and he leads projects dealing with the sustainable management of aviation. And she will be the first speaker. Then we will be listening to Santiago Cortés. Santiago is the head of division of security, quality and environment of aerea, which is the head of air navigation in Spain. Is a spin-off from aerea. Santiago entered in aerea in 2006 to work in the international arena. He worked together with Eurocontrol and the European Commission. He had working in ECO before. His starting point in aviation, and for management and the participation in European projects. We've seen how Bartolome was telling us about CESA. Now we will be also listening to Juan Roman, who's the head of certification, project certification for post-military EADS Airbus. Juan Manuel is an aeronautics engineer, and in 1984 he started his professional activity at the former CASA company, now integrated into Airbus. He's been working in plasticity, wings, flying dynamics and load analysis. He was designated the product certification director. And finally, we will be listening to Gustavo Barba. Gustavo is an independent consultant in security in aviation for governments and industry. Gustavo is coming from the military world. I could speak with him some days ago. Gustavo is survival of crash accidents, of an air accident. I lived an air incident myself, but all of us here have internalized the world of security in a passionate form. So we'll try and see, for those of us who are not usual participants or stakeholders in this field, to listen to very interesting presentations. So Isabel.
Bueno, buenos días a todos.
Everyone, and first I would like to thank Mapfre Global Risk for having invited me to this event. And also want to thank Cesar Lopez for his wonderful way of working and for the effort in coordinating us. I'll try to speak about not very technical issues, but more on technical issues and philosophical things and concepts, and try to contextualize why air traffic has reduced exponentially in terms of accidents while growing exponentially in terms of flights. Air transport.
Así no estoy dando la vuelta todo el rato. Lo primero que quería comentar es
I would like to mention is the importance of air transport. First, in terms of international communication, that all around the countries, but in the case of Spain, the structuralization and of the country. As you know, Spain is a peninsula. It's also got two archipelagos in its territory, and it's in the periphery of Europe. The link up with Europe is very important, and that is proven by air traffic. And it's also the natural link between Europe and South America. It also contributes to economic activity, especially in Spain. It amounts to about 11% of the GDP. It generates many jobs and is a strategic sector in our country for economic growth. It also makes a strong contribution to the industry of tourism. We're beating our own marks. We have received some 250 million tourists this year in Spain, and 80% of them reach Spain by plane. And underlining all that, we have employment generation, which is key in terms of the creation of wealth for society. And once I've given you these hints on why the aviation sector is so important in our country, I would like to comment to you on what has happened with aviation. Aviation is the transport modality, the youngest transport modality. It's been going on for 114 years. In 1903, the first flight took place, and in 114 years, it has become the safest transport modality, and we will see why. As you may see, in 1903, the first flight was done, and also it was the first commercial flight. You've got a diagram there, or the green line is the one telling us how accidents diminished with the years since 1906. The blue line is traffic, but accidents, the accidents ratio per passenger and per kilometer flown has dramatically been reduced. And what that has been secured mean for pedestrians is not having severe accidents and being free from harm. But we know that accidents will always exist, and if we do not work along those lines, we won't be able to reduce it. The accident will always be there, and our work entails those accidents taking place far away from the accident before. So now for us, we understand that all systems will suffer from failures, and the most important thing is to analyze risks and reduce risk levels, keep them into a narrow margin. That's the objective we all sick in terms of aviation, because accidents will always happen. That's a true reality, and we cannot feel frustrated because of that. We've got to work along those premises. So what is security? What is security about? As I was telling you, security is the control and reduction to an acceptable level of risks linked to operations with aircrafts. And how can we reach it from the very beginning? By fulfilling regulation and preventing mistakes from happening. Since 1903, the first flight, 1944, the Chicago Agreement, several countries adhere to it and establish common regulations at air transport is global transport. Also having to take into account global security requirements. How? Through learn lessons in terms of accidents from the very beginning. Air accidents have been researched. All investigation, all research has done while looking into the main causes and also the latent causes, collateral causes. And all those causes meant drawing a recommendation which was turned into a rule, so an accident like a singular accident is never repeated with the same characteristics. That's what we refer to as the prescriptive approach of prescriptive vision. We have information data from what has already happened, and we want to prevent. So, and in the Chicago Agreement, the OIC, the International Organization for Civil Aviation, means that there's the need for authorities to exist in every country. So those authorities supervise, monitor that those regulations are fully implemented everywhere in the sector. I'm talking not just about air companies, but also airports and air navigation providers. And those regulations would affect not just the way of working of those companies, but also the professionals working in aviation, from pilots to air traffic controllers, maintenance operators, and flying staff. That prescriptive approach is based on authorities supervising that exists. I want to give you an idea on what the Spanish Air Security Agency is the Civil Aviation Authority in Spain. Every time there's someone who wants to work in aviation or who wants to count on a company, it should be subject to our supervision and our certification. So we issue certifications, permits, authorizations within which that company, that person cannot develop the business or the service in the aviation sector. So the agency tries to contribute with quality, sustainability, security, become a reference for Europe, because you know that aviation is global, and we have an international network of authorities which brings the same requirements to the whole of Europe and becoming a model institution. So that's how we started during the first 100 years of the history of aviation. A strong regulation, the prescriptive approach. This is a regulation. You've got it there on the left hand side. That's what's done by authorities, and then the fulfillment done by companies working in the sector. The checkups, which is the assessment of whether the regulations are being followed, also done by authorities, and finally the corrections on the findings, on the deficiencies. So that's the traditional approach, and for 100 years we didn't do bad. But we realized that we cannot limit ourselves to that. In Spain, we may say that last year 230 million passengers went through our airports, and in the next 4 years we will reach out to 250. The growth is exponential, that of aviation, and with that growth, if we do not do anything, the growth of accidents will be linear. So we cannot just be limited to that prescriptive traditional approach of many regulations, fulfillment of requirements, analysis of what happened in the past. So we go on to the right hand side, which stands for the preventive approach, which is my main interest. Today, we do not wait for something to happen. We work ahead of that. How? All the production process for a single flight means that different stakeholders are active on it. The airport is got to count a series of secure elements, air navigation, the plane, the maintenance of the plane, the manufacturing of it, air operations, pilots, air traffic controllers, many professionals and companies. And the security in that chain stands over the shoulders of its weakest link. And all around that production chain we want to detect which is the weakest link and act before the link breaks up. That's the prescriptive approach, and that is where we're going to act. In planning, we analyze the risks and we take up actions from the authority to alleviate those risks. In the operators and companies consider mitigation actions in that safety management system, that system of risk analysis, where not just the accident, because that's what we learned, but incidents of all kinds, issues that pilot, controller, or handling staff, even handling staff, if they detect that there are anomalous situations, if they become more important, can create an accident, and they notify it and provide us with data. Bartolomé spoke about that before, data which is very important. And in Czech, the authority supervises, reviews, and checks if airports and navigation companies control and mitigate everything identified in the security systems, and the plan is reviewed to see if what we're doing works fine or if we've got to be more active. That's the basis of the preventive approach. So we work ahead of things happening. How is it that we work in aerea? Some 14 years ago, some authorities, I think it was the one in Australia, tried to work only on the supervision of that active moment, and they abandoned the traditional system on regulations, and it didn't go well. The agency's been working for some years, and we always work in Spain on a mixed supervision system covering all the companies, and we are still analyzing the fulfillment of rules, and also we've started working on the preventive approach. Why is it that we still act on the mixed system? Because the preventive system is very new, and it depends on the maturity of the companies, their security culture, so we cannot go for a state-of-the-art system in activities such as aviation, where we've got companies with just 2 planes or companies with 100 planes. There are different actors. We cannot go for such a big system, and this mixed system is the one many authorities are working on in Europe, and is the one which is working fine for us. And the one side, traditional inspections, rules, etc. Second, preventive approach. Where do we work? How do we work there around that? By creating a national operation system. And Spain set up a series of objectives in terms of operational safety. And those objectives, that what I was saying about the dangers are out there, but what's important is to refrain the security level and not assuming more dangers. That control, that's the main weight, and that weight exists at national level and also very closely entangled with an European-wide program. So we have the national program, objectives in Spain, and flying over those objectives, there are the companies whose objectives should be aligned with that weight, with that significance, in order for the country-wide objectives to be fulfilled. So we've got a series of inputs, and it might seem that we're only talking about security. Maybe later on my colleagues will mention that in a company, for that we cannot just be talking about operational security. There are things affecting it. For example, the operations are linked with security, but they also influence economic issues, how the company is doing in economic terms. An economic problem can lead to security systems not to be so robust, so solid. We analyze human resources, for example, a company with a high rotation around some securities. It's a latent risk, it's a weakness of the system. Legal problems, if many sanctions were granted. So we've got a series of indicators to detect the security level for that company. So all that, we include that into regulations, policies, cost benefit assessment, and in the end we take a series of decisions in the agency where we develop implementation programs, we develop inspections or actions, strategic extraordinary actions, which means going to that link, we act there significantly, and also we act on regulations, even on best practices, maybe not compulsory requirements, but good references that we try to bring to take all the industry onto using them. We've developed campaigns, for example, around something which is maybe not that common for you, such as fire extinction with planes. In 2011 we had 11 casualties, and for some years now we have very good results.
Or at least more acceptable. So all this has an impact, and also the campaigns with everybody, all the actors involved. Now very briefly, I'd like to tell you about some of the models, so examples of the way we do carry out analysis. We use these sort of stars where we analyze the safety ratio in general terms. Operations, so safety of the operation. SANA is a sort of inspection that we do on the ramp in Spain. SAFA those are the inspections carried out by other countries to our planes when they are in France, in Italy, in the UK. The severity of accidents that we or the events, and also the culture, the safety culture of the organization. So we have systems that allow us to determine whether the staff has an acceptable or unacceptable safety culture, also the area navigability, so the maintenance and so on. So we introduce all the data, and we get the indicators. In red we have the average values of the companies in this country, and in other color we will have the data for the specific company we're analyzing. Here we have a different star, and here we're talking about more specific ratios. The quality system of the airline, program for the prevention of accidents and incidents, the programming of the crew, the training of the pilots, documentation, operations, proceedings, ground handling of the plane, instruments and equipment of the aircraft, dangerous or hazardous merchandises, and so on. So here we see that in documents, technical documentation and manuals, it's okay, but that value shows a negative value and it should be improved. So all these things are things that we have developed within our agency, because the preventive model is really, it's great, but we needed to adapt it to our reality. So here we have a map with the colors of the technical indicators on the left in vertical and economic indicators below. Here we have, this is just an example of different airlines. So in green they're fine, in yellow that's an intermediate situation, but in red we need to intervene the day really quickly. So here we have the evolution, so all those graphs are reflected here with the indicators of the different airlines. We have a committee, a high-level committee of companies, and this refers to aerial works. This is not airlines, but we have this for several segments. Now we're doing it with applying this to airports. So we have 3 committees a year, and we check the evolution from committee to committee. And here we have historical data. Here in the arrows we see that this one here was in the green area, but then it went to the red area and we need to intervene. So these are just some examples of what we do. So as a conclusion, the air sector is hyper-regulated at the international scale. The traditional system of supervision in terms of safety has been successful, and we analyzed 8 critical elements. But nevertheless, in order to maintain or even increase the high safety levels that have been achieved, we need to implement the preventive measure approach. This will help us increase safety. The processes that are key to these systems are fed with information and safety data. As it was mentioned earlier, there's no culture of informing here. So for us, safety data are really important, and we need to be strict. If we don't have information, we will ban flying. So these systems have evolved a lot, they're very mature, and the information that is given to us by airlines, the companies in air navigation, in managing of the airports, pilots, captains, information, all this is key for us. And, well, in order to receive the data, everybody needs to feel comfortable and trust the system, and in this sense we need to guarantee the protection of people who inform of problems or issues. Some people do not inform their companies but us, because they have detected bad practice, and these people sometimes are very concerned that this could have a negative impact on them. Some sort of measure taken by the company, but in Spain there is a clear regulation that protects them.
Sí, pues ya termino. Retos a los que se enfrenta el sistema. Ya hablo de aviación en general.
The challenges of the aviation sector in general. The new models. Airlines are more and more competitive. There are new business models. The companies were controlled by just one person or a group of people, and now they are in the stock market, or sometimes the stakeholders are venture capital. So the management of the airports. It's traditionally monopole, but things are changing all over the world. Another issue is the service of air navigation, and another one, the single airspace, and what we're doing in Europe about this, because there's growing saturation. Also, we have the challenge of drones and the invasion of airspace. Also, risks associated to innovation and new technologies, and the experience and training of the staff, and also, of course, the global terrorist threats. So what do we do in the agency? Well, we carry out a role of supervision authority. We improve the quality of the services, supervise, and continue working with regulation, and also develop the excellency. Thank you very much, and sorry it took so long. I would like to remind you all that the PowerPoint presentations will be available in our website, so you can access all that information later on. So now we're going to have the perspective of the operator of navigation, and this is a private vision of something that had always been public, but now it is in private hands. So Santiago Cortés can take the floor. Thank you very much, Cesar, and thank you, Mapfre Global Risks. This conference is of great interest for me, and thank you, Isabel, because you have defined very well this framework of air transport safety, and you have defined the history of success, the key topics, and also the challenges we have for the future. I'd like to explain this the sector, the air navigation services, and I'd like to explain why we've had a certain success and the challenges we still have to face. First of all, I'd like to show this graph. It's a great illustration. It shows the success we've had up to now, and we should maintain that. During the 40s and the 50s, there was a high index of casualties per 100 million passengers, and this was because not all planes actually managed to fly. This was reduced, dropped dramatically, and in the 70s and 80s we see that most accidents are caused by human operators, and this is why we start to act through our organizations. So at the end of last century there was another drop, and then finally we have this single European sky, and there's a great increase in air traffic, and the European Union wants to maintain that very high level of safety in air transport. Air navigation service providers were not so well known, and I'd like to explain what we do. We can provide one or several of the services I have reflected here. Communication services, land, air, so pilot, controller, or controller, pilot. Navigation system services with the systems that exist nowadays, but in the future this will go towards satellite services, also radars to know what the planes are. All this technology is available to the qualified staff, air controllers, so that they manage them, they avoid conflicts and organize their arrival. And also design the airspace. The blue sky is full of routes and speed limits and roundabouts and all that, and also the air maps, so we give them to the planes. So that's what we do, and we do that with 4,000 professionals, 2,000 controllers, 1,000 technicians, and then nearly another 2,000 engineers and staff, 2 million flights per year. Estimations, the outlook is that there will be a growth in the number of passengers and also flights. Last year there was a growth of 8% in the number of flights, and this year already we have achieved that increase too. So what are the conditions that must be taken into account? There's an increase in air traffic, and this means we need to manage new traffic volumes, and therefore we need to introduce new technologies, new procedures, and all this has to be done managing always safety in the introduction of new technologies. There are other elements to be considered. First of all, the quality of the service should be punctual. Also, it must be profitable. The service must be efficient from the economic point of view, and also the sustainability. We must reduce the miles covered, consumption of fuel consumption, and also emissions and noise. So taking all this into consideration, what are the keys for success? Well, Isabel already mentioned one of them, regulation. Regulation has helped us harmonize to a certain degree. I'd like to explain this single sky initiative in Europe, because this is an international standard and it is very demanding in Europe. In 2020, in the year 2000, it was estimated that in 2020 the air traffic would have doubled in volume, and the European Union therefore decided to do something about it in order to go and have manage appropriately this growth. Due to the economic crisis, that volume will be attained in 2035. So what is all this about? The single sky in Europe is about harmonization. There should be a regulator, an authority. The service providers should be certified according to common requirements. They should all be the same in all the member states, like a manual for the different roles, also insurance policies, for example. So all the business of service providers should be equal. The different member states use different technologies, and it is a lot safer to use the same technology in all the members, and if the supporting services use the same technology. And that will, of course, contribute to the increase in moving staff. Controllers will be able to go from one country to another. Also, services may be centralized. For example, it would be better to have one service centralized in just one place, and for example, it is in Brussels that the management of flow is done, and this means that if there are many planes in the sky, they stop the takeoffs until the routes are cleared. So regulation is one of the keys. Another one is procedures. Well, when there are procedures, there's a little bit less of art, and it's true that our staff were very well trained, and each of the members of the staff did a lot in terms of control. And when there were good solutions and best practices, this was turned into a procedure. But in any case, it is very useful to have clear procedures and protocols in order to increase safety. Also, we automatize systems. We have a traffic control system that is automatized. It was the beginning. It was launched for the first time in the 80s, and it has been evolving since. It has all the data of all the flights. It is a very powerful system, and it presents the data and information to the controller in a very simple way, and this makes it easy for controllers to manage all those traffics. And I'd like to mention that the Spanish system has been bought by British and the German, so a tiny success story. But in any case, if procedures and automatized systems fail, we have safety nets. For example, alarms telling us that a plane is flying low, close to the nuclear plant, or the two planes are flying close to each other. So, we've mentioned these two keys, but also analysis. We need to analyze all accidents, big and small. We analyze very few big accidents, but a lot of small ones. 1,000 incidents a year, really tiny, really small, but it is very important to analyze those events, those accidents, to learn lessons from that, detect black spots in the air maps, and also analyzing in a reactive way what's happened is really important with the lagging indicators, but this also helps us later on work ahead. And we are elaborating indicators, predictive indicators that will allow us to foresee what's going to happen. So those leading indicators, well, we have an automatized system with a lot of data, and this should allow us, enable us to extract those indicators, but we need to dedicate some time to decide what should be monitored. That's another of the keys. Finally, people. We have good procedures, good technologies, good safety nets. But then we have people at the very end. The people are the ones using those technologies. And in this sense, it's a more recent work, but we're working a lot on human factors like stress management, fatigue management, and we also analyze the use of psychoactive substances, so medicines, how to help our controllers mainly to work better. And also, of course, there's the issue of human error. This is something that cannot be avoided. It's unavoidable. So an action that does not produce the expected result, but if we analyze when it takes place, when we're planning the action, or when it is being executed, we can draw some conclusions, and that can help us, our staff, detect mistakes and correct them before they have serious consequences. So, of course, we cannot avoid everything, but we are supporting our controllers in this sense. I'd like to finish with our challenges. There are many of them, but of course the increase of air traffic. In 2035 there will be twice as many as in 2000, so 4 million planes are expected. Also their impact on the environment, noise, for example, when they land. People don't like the plane flying over their homes, and in this sense we need to have very, very accurate and precise routes. Also cyber security. We have a very automatized system, and our programs are not, our system is running on programs that are not used by the general public, but we need to control this. It's a serious challenge. Also the challenge of drones. Of course, a controller is managing 40 planes, and we're trying to make him manage 43, and if we add drones to that, then, well, we would need to analyze all this very well. And it is, of course, an industry that needs to be fostered. And the last challenge, global companies. There are services, satellite services, that are not subject to European rules and regulations because the providers are from outside of Europe, but we cannot require or demand what is demanded from us by the European Commission. And this means that we really have many difficulties in signing agreements with companies in order to increase the quality and safety of our services. And that's the end of my presentation. I hope this helped you understand where we're coming from, why it is safer to fly than ever before, and what still needs to be done in the future.
Muchas gracias, Santiago.
Thank you very much, Santiago. Now I'll give the floor to Juan, who is going to help us understand the very important role played by the material. So this is the perspective of the plane manufacturer. So Juan, you can take the floor. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank for the invitation extended to Airbus. Miguel Angel Morel couldn't come, and he told me, well, I wanted to go to Mapfre's convention, I couldn't make it, so it's your role to go. So we'll try to explain the perspective of the manufacturer. First of all, in our view, the key for success, in general terms, and particularly in safety, is the globalization of the system. We have defined common standards and rules for all nations, and since then the countries are developing regulations that are all going in the same direction. The development of these rules started in the US, then in Europe, then we have very strong regulations for safety, and for us that's the key for success. So how does the system work? It's very simple, in fact. First of all, we must recognize and acknowledge that human activities are subject to errors, to mistakes, and that this may lead to unsafe situations and even accidents. So in every activity in aviation there are always several controls that have been designed to prevent accidents. So the historical evolution of the system, it was initially focused on the development of basic technologies of flight, so aerodynamism, propulsion, structures, and then massive activities in air transport, and we started to see accidents, and it was clear that it was necessary to investigate those accidents in detail in order to take mitigating actions. So there were several really serious accidents, and new aspects were taken into account, like the interaction human-machine, human aspects, the safety in the design of systems, and lately we're taking into account organizational aspects, so safety in terms of the organizational elements. And now we have the safety management systems that have been published, and we need to approach challenges for us as manufacturers. Drones in general, not only really small vehicles, but drones in general are an enormous challenge for manufacturers, but also for operators. Here we have the European regulatory scheme. We have EASA, that's published in the website, and we're covering technical aspects that affect the design of the product, also the maintenance of the product throughout its life span, and also air traffic control, aviation rules, everything is included here, and we can see that there is an evolution here, and this is a very agile evolution. So what's going on in the military world? Globalization does not exist. There's no one single agency like OAC giving instructions about what to do and how to do things. Military things are specific and national. And this means that there are several problems, and in Europe, for example, where new military products are to be developed, high technology, like Eurofighters and tankers and other things, we need to harmonize regulations. There is an initiative launched by the Defense Agency in Europe that tries to harmonize, intends to harmonize the navigation, military navigation systems according to the civic regulation, but we have not yet reached the implementation stage, because implementation is not being done appropriately. Each nation is implementing things in their own way. Bartolome knows very well what we think about all this. Industry needs harmonization between the civil system and the military system, because in the end we're all talking about the same things, and there are not really any reasons to manage safety differently. Of course, there are some special characteristics in the military world, but in general, most topics may be dealt with in common.
How is it that this works? Well, first, we have the design organizations from which all the information on the product stems. Designing an engine or a plane should be certified. We will see how the process goes later on. And that means that you've got to guarantee the security of that design. From that certification, data for maintenance and operation are generated, and all that must be managed in a harmonized fashion by authorities. And the ways, the approaches are first obtain type certificates, issue the environmental certificates, noise and emissions. Then the operator certificates are there, but you do not have just to certify products, but also the organizations active in design, production, maintenance, etc. So an aircraft product cannot be designed by anyone. It should be done by companies certified by the corresponding authorities. In the case of manufacturers, we're going to speak about the type certificates, which are there to guarantee the security of the design. It is the basis of everything. These type of certificates certificate the documentation of the plane, the blueprints, the data to the smallest level of detail. The process is monitored by authorities by analyzing the documents, trial analysis, trial results, etc. And after a costly process, a certificate is issued and is linked to the environmental certificate, noise and emissions. And apart from that, before a product, a commercial plane can enter service, the operational certification should be developed. The MNL, for example, you've got to certify that. It was not the case before, and with that, the loop is being closed. There you have examples of certificates. For example, the last one is the one given by AESA for humanitarian operations 295, and the same from the FA from many years ago. There's something else which is fundamental. A design organization should always report on defects, faults, problems. It's obligatory. And we've got any faulty report should be analyzed by us and should be reported on to the authorities in case it is a potential risk. And not just that, we've got to adopt the measures needed to correct them. So the implementation of a series of actions is mandatory in an aircraft or in a fleet, etc. This system is a collaborative system, it's not coercional. If an organization does not abide by the rules, authorities may act, but companies report. The concept is that from that authorities draw statistical information, so certain regulation can be modified and actions can be taken to modify security conditions, and that's one of the keys of the success of the system. The approval of organizations. First, design organizations. Design organizations, such as I was saying before, no engineering company can design aircrafts without the approval of EASA or ESA for products which are still under responsibility of the national agency, of INTA or ADGAM or any authority you're working on with. So you've got first to count on an organizational structure. You've got to have all responsibilities defined. Who's responsible for what? With an approval on the side, on the part of the authorities. You've got to document all your processes and methods, and also you've got to count on approval of your assets and resources in terms of knowledge and adequacy, and all that should be subject to internal approval systems, which mean the development of internal audit. There's a department which prepares audits, and additionally to that, agency, ESA, INTA, audit as depending on the results. And in terms of production, the objective of that is to guarantee that what is produced, what is manufactured, is according to the design approved, both in terms of its internal components certified by the Form 1, the conformity declaration for a component, or in terms of a full product which clarifies that the full product fulfills the requirements and is in agreement with the approved regulations. So the design is the main driver, the main engine, because in the end parts and crafts are produced according to an approved design. Maintenance is not just what you have in mind. Modifying aircraft should be done at specialized maintenance centers classified as 104. For example, turning our crafts, our planes, when we modify them, we do that at 135 plans designated as 135. The management system is a general system which takes into account risk management for decision making, not just in design organizations, but also, I haven't got much else to say about that. It is based on those foundations, indexes, risk management, and the most important for me, which is to establish a safety culture. And then the drone challenge. The drones are a true challenge at all levels in terms of manufacturing authorities, operators, and the number of operations which can be done with these machines is incredible. The size of the products you can think of can go from a few grams to large planes. There was a possibility for air taxis in debate. It is true, we're dealing with urban air mobility projects, thinking on the problems with traffic in large cities, for example, air buses, so everything is possible. We are still a bit far away from that, but it will be done in time. So the response by authorities and operators, the response will be a determining factor in the success of this. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Juan.
Thank you very much, Juan. And now Gustavo is going to speak to us with an integrative vision, because Gustavo has cooperated with OASI and many international and national authorities. I'm going to try and do what pilots do. I'm going to check the timing. I'm going to close up with the presentations according to the presentations of my colleagues. In the time it takes to get from Terminal 1 in Barajas to Track 1, you will become a specialist in security. Which are our objectives? To know which are security levels, and then to get to know how they've been reached, and then knowing if this is sustainable or not, and fourth, how to extrapolate these teachings to the sector. The facts. First, data are always biased. That's the first thing an analyst learns. That thing of all aviation being secure, it is not the same way. We are speaking about civil operations above 5,700 kilos. These are updated diagrams. The printing you have behind is the growth of traffic. The columns stand for accidents, just those in terms of loss of whole, and these are the most severe ones. What can you see there? It is cyclical. What you have achieved one year can be lost next year. Consolidated data along 5 years have been lost, so nothing is guaranteed and everything depends on us looking at the prism from all sides. In 2015 we managed to have in commercial aviation above 1,700 kilos one single accident per 3.3 million flights, but in 2016 it was 2.6 per 2.6 million. So the learned lesson is that statistics are fine, but they need analysts to interpret them. So I want to let you know that the aviation system is the safest industry developed by mankind in history. Why do we say that we are safe? Because the main objective we had was to have an accident below 1 million cycle of operations. No one managed to get that. And the landmark was that since the 90s, we learned that security could not be improved with a traditional approach. So we've introduced it in the business model. As in MBA schools, security should be an embedded element in the business model. The title of this roundtable session was Intelligence and Security. And reliability is security. Security management systems are needed. And then fatal casualties in 2016, there was almost double the victims as in 2015. So we are not fully secure. So, and what is the analysis we have? We have created an independent United Nations agency trying to harmonize security in the world. As accidents happen to who? They happen to me, to you? No, they happen to an organization. Which kind of an organization? The one, the operator, the air operators. So the headlines is always a company X suffer an accident, and then the next headline is a plane from manufactured by company X has had an accident. So apart from creating programs, we wanted to create an international audit. I've been working on this program in Montreal, and I worked for the federal government of the United Arab Emirates. And what is it that we got from the Prime Minister? They told us that they wanted to be first in the world, so reach the best fulfillment level. So the UAE is the country with the highest level of fulfillment of air security. And we could say, well, the reality is the best in the world, isn't it? And then what happened? One Emirates flight, fly Dubai. So prescriptive procedures are a condition needed, but they are not enough. So that does not match with reality. Why? Because the value in terms of regulatory fulfillment is limited. And I would like to call your attention on this. This comes from Harvard and is the theory of the regulatory craft. How do we regulate our lives? Everything we have is artificial. We live in an artificial society. What's legal, illegal, politically correct or not, and the blue circle represents what's illegal. Everything in that circle could not be done because Isabel would tell us that it's illegal, and we would say, okay, fine. But then there's another circle which stands for insecurity. I don't want to do insecure things. But once the traceability between and the concordance between security and insecurity is partial, so regulation in the punishment of insecurity is of limited efficacy. If we're talking about efficacy regulation, we are imposing a 70% cost in terms of legal convention, which does not let the industry to neither invest nor produce. So that's why we applied security symmetrics. So that's why I can play in this field. But you've got to prove that you're fit, that you're in shape. The problems are incredible. The OASI things. Why do accidents happen? Because someone makes a mistake. But accidents happen in organizations, and organizations are led by leaders. They are not democratic organizations. There's a CEO with full powers. They make decisions, establish policies, objectives, and business plans. So there's a series of working conditions, and those are the conditions we work in. And those working conditions may subject us to stress, because people can be fired if the working targets are not fulfilled. And there are some defense keys, such as technology, procedures, and training. We try to capture in that safety net all deviations, but as nothing is perfect, we end up suffering from accidents. But we've got to look into the latent path between the decision making and accidents, and that, if documented, is of incredible value. I haven't invented these. It's a causality element, civil aviation, and all of us believe that certification is of supreme value, but it also means creating a good environment. The civil aviation environment, which covers all standards, states that in an ideal environment we issue a certificate. But once we do the deployment operation, the collateral conditions mean that there's a series of deviations, and that's the operational diversion. If it's not monitored, we start operating, for example, the plane can fly outside its certification envelope because the plane is certified in an envelope, something pilots do not know unless they are test pilots. So those security systems try to detect that deviation to try and focus us around the smaller risk area. So that's why we use formal concepts. We're not going into a dictionary looking for definitions. We've got our own definition of security on the OASI, the SMS definition, and everyone knows how risk control, risk control is about, and that's why we publish all these components, and we force operators and state to become responsible for what they do, and what they do should cover a series of objectives. I fulfill all regulations, but what's your objective? 1, 10, 9, 7, 6, as in any business. So the conclusion is that it is cyclical, and this is a sample carried out by the biggest experts in security. Is the response by Autofile Global. Do you believe that security will improve in the next few years? And from 10 to 15% say that that's not the case. Why? Because there's a series of dangers and a very competitive model. The biggest problem we have is the lack of qualified personnel, because aviation is growing a lot, and also because we tend to retire people to take them outside of the system. And pilots will be flying after sleeping for just 4 hours, and then stress and fatigue appears and mistake happens, and that's documented, and that's the biggest danger in the table on the left-hand side. Technological solution covers certainties, but we are a social technical system. We try to escape from bimodal.
Eso no puede tener en cuenta todas las condiciones.
That cannot take all conditions, and it was taking the human element aside, and they said that they were perfect. And what did they have? They have accidents and catastrophes, including pilots in their flying base in Toulouse. So we cannot take off the human element from technology. At least we're not going to see. The truth is that when we look more, we find things we don't like. And if we only look into that, we see they were quasi-accidents in Europe. No one knows that. That was underneath the carpet. And we see that serious accidents are doubling every year. It means we are surfing troubled waters, and that's within operation. But if we look into technical mistakes, they increase 55% because there are new models in terms of viability and maintenance processes, and also there's a lot of competition with regards to the implementation of the viability directive because manufacturers are reluctant to implement that, and the general public does not know that, but that's the big battle horse for viability to being guarantee success. Now there are companies who no one knows. The pilots, they are not employees of themselves, neither they have a base, no work anywhere, and it's very difficult for any authority to control them. And that evolution of the business market makes us not to be able to assess what the risks are. And with regard to recommendations, there are 3. Evolution of the security methodology. We've not we are going to research not just into motivations, but looking into business models, looking into the performance, the fulfillment of security objectives, and the true reality is that everything outside intelligence will go nowhere. So the CEO must know security and perceive true risks, document them, because if decisions are not made, they can face penal and criminal responsibilities, and that's fundamental for building up a security assessment implementation. And last, the shell system integrates the human element in decision making with software, with hardware, with environment, and with our human elements. This is a model which has been accepted by the YC, and that helps us surf within a secure the variety system. So when we see cuts, the road is no longer 20 meters wide, but 15, 10, and the variability doesn't allow for error margins. There are human successful actions, and we've got to learn from good actions. There's an interesting video, but as we are short of time, we're not choosing. And it's a video on Sullenberger. He was interviewed, and he said it was a very stressful event, very fast. And do you think you could have done it if you would have done it if you could not have got a good rest? Yeah, I was well rested, but I know that many colleagues are not resting well, and this industry is bringing us onto situations which have no point of return. The business model for some companies is not sustainable. Some companies have been losing money for many years, and they're going to disappear. The premiums they sign, for example, the 370, and not knowing what happens with the Egypt. The model is high relativity organizations. They are organizations which within a coupling can suffer from catastrophic failures. So they need an excellence program for security, and they must play with partnership, look for global objectives, and count on a loyal client portfolio So they can, on the one side, to promote from the best of premium to the equation of that, and imposing in corporate culture, a culture which protects what you do not have yet, because insurers are going to protect your assets, but culture will protect production. Those are the four pillars of the production, which stem from the intelligence of the CEO, and nothing can be done if they are not followed, and we will have organizations which will be resilient to transformations because they're very strong and they're ready for that. The characteristics would be a synergy program where we would do very many activities, and it would be a big portfolio which could be given to all clients in a big company. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Gustavo. La verdad es que es un lujo teneros.
Gustavo, I feel so glad, so happy to count on such brilliant speakers, and I hope the audience has been informed of these success experiences which can be applied to our clients, to mining, to oil production. All they are oriented to management.
De exactamente 3 minutos.
We've got 3 minutes because we've got to leave for the main room at which the closing ceremony will take place, and I would like to give you the opportunity to ask for questions or maybe tell us about the concerns. Santiago, my name is Carlos Bernabeu. I listened to some things you mentioned in your presentation, which for me was very clear, as you spoke about experiencing of tests on psychoactives substances from pilots. For example, I remember the Dune novel, which machines were prohibited, so people had to have their brains simulated. So it is not in terms of what to supply them, it is in the European environment, and what we should do it would be to help controllers, so if they have a problem, a medical problem, they can know what they can have, what they cannot have with the treatment. But it's very difficult. And one additional question, or a pair of them, Alejandro Garcia. My question is for Isabel Maestre. Maybe it's the person who can answer this. Maybe that's not the case, or steps are being done, but those risk evaluations are to be integrated into any transparency law or clarity law, or are they going to be published, or users can make decisions depending on those assessments?
Todos, y a mí me parece bastante transparente.
Well, the way the program is public, and those are the objectives, and out of those objectives we do not enter into any deviation. The results of the analysis in Spain are protected. The transparency laws, security issues in terms of terrorism operations are protected, but apart from that, they're very complex data, very technical data. There are difficulties, for example, in terms of the results. The result research, people do not read them because they cannot understand them. So they are not public, and there's no provision for them to be clear. But we must guarantee that all companies working in our country, active in our country, follow the security requirements, the European requirements, which are more stringent than those of what. And the last question. I'm sorry, the gentleman is not using the microphone, and the sound is not reaching us. Sorry, we're not getting any sound.
Es una cuestión de wording, de palabra.
It's a wording issue. Prevention in the OASI language has withdrawn. and we speak about predictive analysis.
También.
Bueno, pues sintiéndolo mucho tenemos que
Well, I'm afraid we've
concluir la
got
mesa
to
y
leave.
muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much.